Welcome, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, to our 24th class of Shar Habitachan. We're going to be starting chapter 4. I am Chaya Ben Shimon, your host. We always like to start off with giving because how we give, that's how Hashem will give to us. Let's give generously so Hashem will give us generously. We're going to put some coins in the tzedakah box. Please join me from home. We're going to say Psalm Chaf together, which is Psalm 20, Kapitel Chaf, for the safety of all of our brothers and sisters around the world, and our 101 hostages should come home alive already, immediately. We're looking forward to celebrating the news together. So join me. Lam Natseach Mizmar LeDavid Yancha Adonai B'Yam Sarah Yisagevcha Shem Elehea Kai V'Yishlach Ezracha Mikaidesh Umitzian Yisadecha Yizkar Kol Min Chaysecha V'Yilascha Yidash Nasela Yitain Lacha Chalavacha V'Chol Tzascha Yimaleh Niranina B'Shuasecha U'V'Shem Eloheinu Nidgal Yimaleh Adonai Kol Mishalesecha Ata Yadaiti Ki Yashia Adonai Mishechai Yanehu Mishmei Kachai B'Voros Yishayim Ela Varecha V'Ela Vasusim V'Anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Nasker Hema Karu V'Nafalo V'Anachnu Kamnu V'Nisaydad Adonai Hashia Hamelach Yanenu V'Yam Karenu. The Tzemach Tzedek said if we only knew the power of Tehillim, we would say it day and night. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chaya Mink, CHAYAMINK, to get past recordings of Shar Habitachan and other incredible stories and journeys. We're going to now have Devorah Andruzier share with us chapter 4. Devorah Andruzier is an addiction recovery coach and a Shar Habitachan enthusiast. Welcome, Devorah.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be back. So we're going to be starting chapter 4 today. It's the longest chapter in the books. It will be quite a bit to get through, but I'm just going to read the summary of chapter 3 so we have a frame of reference as to where we were holding. Okay. There are 5 introductory concepts that a person must internalize in order to make his bitachon complete. 1. A person must understand that only God possesses the 7 qualities that allow for trust, and therefore it follows that he should have bitachon in God and in no one else. Number 2, God knows even the innermost thoughts of a person, and therefore a person is not able to pay mere lip service to having bitachon. Number 3, the person's trust should be solely in God and no one else in addition to God. Number 4, bitachon ought to be combined with serving God. And number 5, a person must also make efforts to obtain his needs. So we talked about the fact that Shar Habitachan is other learning that we do. We're like looking for intellectual pursuit. I want to understand more. I want to go deeper. But when we're doing this, it's more of a physical exercise than a mental one. It was said to be that there was this great rabbi who learned Shar Habitachan 10,000 times. And it wasn't the only thing that he was learning. He was obviously learning all different types of Torah. And we talked about this. The main part of what Shar Habitachan does for us, it brings us bitachon, the shoresh, the root word is betach, certainty. It brings us peace and calm in the awareness and in the knowledge that Hashem has our backs. Hashem is always there for us, taking care of us, whether we deserve it or not. Okay. So now we're going to begin chapter 4. And in here we are going to, what the beginning part is talking about is the 7 areas in which we must trust God and how to trust in each of the different areas. So there's many categories and subcategories. And then we'll get to a list of 7 different qualities and how we should express ourselves through those different qualities. Okay, so we're on the top of page 110. I'm going to just start with a short story. So there was a woman in Israel, married, living okay with her husband, and her husband passes away. And she's alone with 3 children. She does not have a proper livelihood, and they're struggling. And after 10 months, she wakes up one morning and the hot water tank in their home had exploded and the house was flooded, and that was it. It completely broke her. She sat down on the couch and she was like pretty much paralyzed. She couldn't move. And her young son comes over to her lady and he's like, "Mom," however he's saying it in Hebrew, "Mom, we need to do something. We need to take care of this. The whole house is flooding." And she's literally sitting there completely dissociated, unable to even move. Like it was just the last thing. She couldn't take it anymore. So he brings a bunch of towels and he starts to mop up the floor, and he picks up the phone and he goes through some information directory and he finds a company where they have hot water tanks, and he calls them and he says, we need a hot water tank. This gentleman, Uri, comes to the door with a hot water tank. I'm sorry, he comes to the door, he goes into the house, and he very quickly assesses the situation of what's going on there, and he realizes the predicament that this family is in, and that they're not going to be able to afford a new hot water tank. So he brings them the newest, best, most amazing hot water tank to be able to take care of this family. And he says to them, I just want to tell you that right now the city is running a special program that if your hot water tank breaks, the government is paying for a new one. Now, obviously, he was paying for it for himself. He just realized that this woman was not going to be able to afford to do this. So he, out of the kindness of his heart, did it for her. Fast forward many years, this Uri is an older gentleman. He's in his home, and his air conditioning unit breaks. And his doctor says to him, with the heat in Israel, sometimes that heat, the summer heat, when there's a chamtzin and the hot winds blow, he said, you're an older gentleman, you must get a new air conditioning. It's dangerous for your health. So this Uri calls, a typical Israeli, calls the AC company and he says, I need a new air conditioning, but I don't care if it's old, I don't care if it's used, I just need something that works, but send me the cheapest thing that will make my house cooler. Send me the cheapest thing. Because now he's older and up in his years and not able to afford a new air conditioning. All of a sudden, a beautiful, gorgeous, big AC unit arrives to his house. So what does Uri say to himself? I told them I wanted the cheapest. I don't care if it's old or used. They're going to take advantage of an old man. They're trying to take advantage of me. They're going to send it to me, and then they're going to expect me to pay for it. So he calls them up, and he's very, very upset and very nervous. And the owner gets on the phone, and he says, don't worry. I'm going to come to your home, and I'm going to explain everything, and I'm going to take care of it for you. Who comes to his home? It's little Levi. And he says to him, no, this is the air conditioning that you're supposed to have, because right now the government is hosting a very good program that if any senior citizen's air conditioning is broken, they get a new one. So what is this beautiful, very sweet story? What is this story teaching us? That we need to look out for each other. We talk about a lot in Bitachon, what Hashem can do for us. What do I need to be able to trust another? But very often, we are another person's life vest. We are the ones who are going to be there to save that person. And we don't know which person really needs the saving or doesn't, which is why, as Jewish people, when we walk the streets, we're meant to walk the streets with our eyes open, meaning curious. Get curious about your people. Get curious about the ones in your community who walk down the streets. Listen to what they're saying and listen even more to what they're not saying. Because very often when someone's in pain, they're incapable of putting it out, but you can see it on a face. So here we see such a beautiful story of Uri when he was able to step up and help this family. And then years later, this little lady who owned the AC company at that point was able to give back and help Uri. Okay, so now we're going to start on the top of page 110. The 7 areas in which we must trust in God. The matters regarding which the believer in God is obligated to rely on the Creator are comprised of 2 categories. The first category is matters that pertain to this world. The second category is matters that pertain to the world to come. The first category itself, matters that pertain to this world, can be divided into 2 parts. The first subcategory consists of worldly matters that benefit the person in this world, while the second subcategory consists of worldly matters that benefit the person in the world to come. Furthermore, the subcategory of matters that benefit the person in this world can be divided into 3 categories. The first, matters that benefit the person himself, just me. Number 2, the second, matters that benefit his livelihood as well as the sources of his wealth and various possessions. Number 3, matters that benefit members of his household, his wife, his close family friends, his enemies, and people who are either more important or less important than him. So I just want to focus on this for a moment. His close family friends and his friends. So he's making a differentiation. And I feel like very often in our world, those of us who don't share and just hold everything in need to learn to be a little bit more of a sharer and get some of what's in here and doesn't need to be in here shared with someone else so you can relieve some of your stress, pain, trauma. But there's those who do share sometimes tend to overshare. And when we're oversharing, we're really not sharing at all. So the Torah actually teaches us how to share properly. You have your inner circle, say your spouse. Then you have a bigger circle of your spouse and your children. And that circle grows and grows. And what you tell the inner circle is not what you share with the big, greater circle. So here he says his close family friends and his friends. He's making a differentiation. There is a differentiation. We have different categories and different levels of friendships. And we need to be careful that we're sharing our deepest secrets and the things that we're struggling with, or even the things that we're celebrating with the right people. He also says his enemies, because the Jewish people, we learn from everyone. Sometimes we learn how to act, and sometimes we learn how not to act. And the people who are either more or important or less important than him. This is a very important sentence, because sometimes a person walks the world and they're like, well, I'm a very smart person, or I'm a very business savvy person. What is this little guy over here ever going to be able to teach me? And here it's explaining to us that we literally can learn something from everyone, and that our ego shouldn't be so big that our head can't hear when someone who seems more simple than us, and maybe even is more simple than us, even that person has something to teach us. Then, okay, we're on the top of page 111. The subcategory of worldly matters that benefit a person in the world to come can also be divided into two categories. One, the first, obligations of the heart and mitzvos performed with the limbs, which pertain to him alone and do not benefit or cause harm to anyone else. The second, mitzvot that are performed with the limbs and that cannot be performed without the participation of another person, with one person performing the act and the other being the recipient. Examples of such mitzvot: charity, acts of kindness, teaching Torah and instructing other people to do good or warning them against doing bad. We cannot do that unless there is someone else on the other side of us. Bottom of page 111. Matters of the world to come can also be divided into two categories. One of them, the reward that a person receives in the world to come, which he deserves for his good deeds in this world. Number two, the good that the person receives in the world to come, because the kindness of the Creator may he be exalted to the pious and the prophets. So we all end up in the world to come, whether we deserve it or not. It's just the different ways we will experience the world to come, and we will talk about that more as we get into this. Top of page 112. Here's where we're going to list what we just talked about, but in 7 clear categories. In total, there are 7 categories of matters for which a person relies on the Creator. Number 1, matters that pertain solely to the person himself. Number 2, matters that pertain to his wealth and his means of livelihood. Number 3, matters that pertain to his wife, children, family members, friends, and enemies. Number 4, obligations of the heart and the mitzvot performed with the limbs of the person that benefit or cause harm solely to the person himself. Obligations performed with the limbs of the person that can benefit or harm other people. Number 6, the reward in the world to come that is commensurate with the person's actions in this world, meaning deserved. Number 7, the reward in the world to come that comes from a form of kindness from the Creator, blessed be He, to those who are treasured by Him and to those who love Him, as it is written in the Tehillim. How abundant is your kindness that you have hidden for those who fear you in the presence of man. You have acted for those who take refuge in you. top of page 113. Having explained in the previous 2 chapters the 5 fundamental concepts that as a result of recognizing them, it is possible for the person to have complete bitachon in God, may he be exalted, it is now incumbent on me to juxtapose the explanation of the proper manner in which a person should have bitachon regarding each of the aforementioned 7 categories. Through them, he will know how to go about having bitachon in God, as well as the proper way to rely on others when and if necessary. Okay, bottom of page 113. What concerns you is determined by God, yet you must take initiative. I will say as an explanation of the first category of the 7, which consists of the matters that pertain solely to the person himself, his life and death, food for his livelihood, clothing, shelter, health and illness, and character traits for which a person needs in order to function well. Regarding each of these matters, the proper manner in which a person is to rely on God is to give himself over regarding all of these matters to the predetermined ways in which the Creator has decided to conduct himself with him. He should rely on God, may he be blessed, and recognize that none of these matters come into being unless it has been predetermined by God that they are proper for him, both in this world and in the world to come, and that all will ultimately be for the best. He should also realize, we're on the top of page 114. He should also realize that God conducts himself equally regarding all of those matters, so that no other being's advice or behavior can help him unless it is with God's permission and according to his decree and judgment. Just as a person understands that no being has power over his life or death, his illnesses or his health, so too, no being has any control over his livelihood, his other needs, his clothing, and other matters pertaining to his body. So let's talk about this. When Hashem gives us worldly possessions, he is lending them to us for the duration of our lifetime here. But when he lends us these physical possessions, he's giving them to us and we are able to do whatever we want with it. But when he gave us our neshama and our body, he never gave us complete ownership of it. And we can never, ever hurt or put our own bodies in danger. We must remain and do the best possible to remain in a healthy state. So about this, where it says with permission, without permission, when we talk about health, life and death, there is an awareness that comes from Hashem, right? I can live an extremely healthy lifestyle. That doesn't determine whether or not I am going to have any, God forbid, diseases or anything, because Hashem makes those decisions. So when we say a person is ill, we reach out, we start davening to Hashem and all of that. But with worldly matters, we don't necessarily do that. I don't get into my car in the morning and say to my kids, guys, everybody say thank you to Hashem for mommy's car. I just say, get into mommy's car, get into daddy's car. Our physicality, we feel we have more control over, because that's how Hashem set it up. So here it's coming to tell us that the exact same God who is responsible for life and death, who is responsible for health and illness, is the same God that is responsible for our livelihood and all of our possessions. Now, there's a story told here of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was an incredible tzaddik, a great giant, taught and learned and was extremely connected to Hashem. And it says that on his deathbed, he was weeping. And his students said to him, why are you weeping? And he said, I'm thinking about how I behaved in my life and whether I lived up to the standards of what Hashem expected for me. And I'm wondering where I'm going to go in the world to come. So think to ourselves, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was an absolute tzaddik. He never, ever deviated from learning Torah for a moment. So why on his deathbed is he crying that he doesn't know where he's going? because on his deathbed is the first moment that he had the time to think about his life. Because while he was living his life, he wasn't thinking about, am I doing what Hashem needs from me, or making calculations, where am I going to end up, what zechusim I'm going to have, what merits am I going to have, what merits am I not going to have. He was living his mission of service to Hashem. Only when he was on his deathbed and he could no longer learn and teach was he able to take the time to say to himself, did I live the way that God wanted me to? Did I take advantage of every moment? So we know that a person is allotted a precise amount of time in their lives. And when we're not maximizing each moment, not only are we not growing in that moment, but we are missing a moment of ultimate purpose in our lives. And we never want to miss a moment, because that is the one thing we can never get back. Okay, we are now on the top of page 115. So I'm going to actually read on top of the explanation part before we get into it, because it opens up what this chapter is going to be sharing with us. True bitachon means understanding that even if others seem to have influence over a person's livelihood and needs, in truth, everything is in God's hands, and no one can have influence over his livelihood or needs unless God has predetermined it. Now the author now returns to further elaborate on the topic of hishtadlut, our effort that we need to put in, which was discussed in chapter 3, by saying that even a person who fully relies on God must still make efforts to pursue the natural means that will benefit him. Okay, so here we're talking about, now we are feeling some of our bitachon at this point. We're making that heart, mind, soul connection. It's no longer just an intellectual thing of, if I would trust in Hashem, I would have more peace and certainty in my life. I believe that we're all starting to feel this a little bit from some of the feedback that we've been getting from some of the people that I meet in the world. And they're like, I recognize you from somewhere. And I'm like, I don't think we've ever met. And like, oh, you're the Shar Habitachan lady. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's me. So we're going to get into this. It's a very exciting part. Okay. However, accompanying the person's conviction that, one, all of his matters are completely under the jurisdiction of the decrees of the Creator, may he be exalted, and two, everything that the Creator chooses for him is the best choice. The person is obligated to make efforts to pursue the means that will benefit him and to choose those means that appear to be the best. God will then do what he has already decreed. So here it's saying basically that Hashem created a perfect world. And it's also saying that Hashem created a world that we need to work on that is imperfect. So there's two ways of looking at the world. We're looking at the physical world, the weekday world, and we're looking at the spiritual world, the Shabbos world. So if we're talking about the physical world, Hashem created the physical world with perfection. All we have to do is take things that he's already created and develop them, synergize them to make something new. In the spiritual world, in the Shabbos perspective, who are we? We are people who are not just involved in that physicality. Our spiritual selves have to make that connection with Hashem. Okay? Continue now on the top of page 116. By way of comparison, although the end of a person's life and how long he will live have been fixed by the decree of the Creator, may he be blessed, the person must nevertheless pursue the means that preserve his life, such as food, drink, clothing, living quarters, according to his needs. Regarding them, he is not to rely on God by saying, if that has been predetermined by the decree of the Creator that I should live, then he will keep me alive, even without food for my entire life, and when I will not exert myself in pursuing sustenance or in the toil that is necessary to obtain a livelihood that will pay for the sustenance. So we must make the hishtadlus. And we're going to finish here for today. And in our next lesson, we're going to talk about all that it means for a human being to take care of self and how we are not allowed to harm our physical bodies in any way. Thank you for joining us today and looking forward to the next class.
Thank you so much, Devorah Leah. We always like to end off with a quote of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So here goes. The uniqueness and otherness of the Jewish people is not a weakness, but a strength. The Rebbe. We do these classes in memory of our dear grandmothers Rivka Dina Bas Yosef Yehuda and Rachel Bela Bas Shneir Zalman. We hope you're proud. We will see you next time. Thank you for tuning in, and feedback is appreciated.